what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. I've got a couple more interesting stories for you guys today. The first story that I've got for you guys today, Ramon Dino arriving home to a hero's welcome in Brazil. This is something I think a lot of us have been waiting to see. We've seen the reception that Hadi got when he won the Olympia, even the years where he was runner-up, the crazy reception that he got in Iran. But we know that Brazilian fans are some of the most intense, passionate fans in bodybuilding. And one of the things that I thought was really cool was Ramon Dino arriving at the airport, and there were like news stations, like local media cameras, like not bodybuilding media, like actual news stations there to greet him off the plane. And I think that's really one of the biggest differences between American bodybuilders and then some of these countries that are really passionate is you don't see guys like, you're not going to see Derek arrive back home and get off his flight and have, NBC, ABC, Fox News waiting to interview him. And I think to me, that's the coolest thing about the bodybuilding culture in Brazil. It's clearly like very well within the mainstream cultural zeitgeist of Brazil to where the news stations are coming. They're broadcasting Ramon's arrival on the actual news, not just like an ESPN or even just a YouTube channel. It's like actual news, microphones, cameras, like a legitimate celebrity. And we really just don't have that here in America. The bodybuilding culture here is very much still kind of fringe, niche, subculture type of thing. And it seems like in Brazil, it's reached that more mainstream level. And I think that's the cool part. Now, they also picked him up in a fire truck and had him arriving back to Ironburg Gym in the fire truck. I thought that was cool. He was like waving to people on the street in the truck. And the turnout was obviously massive. There was thousands of fans there. There was a ton of people there to greet Ramon. But I do have to say, I still think the reception that we saw Hadi get when he won back in Iran, I think that was still the biggest bodybuilding reception, homecoming, greeting, etc. that we've ever seen. I still think Hadi holds that record. I think that was one of the craziest things I've ever seen the year that he won, returning to his country. And they even built a statue for him. And I've heard there's rumors that they're going to build a statue of Ramon Dino, too, somewhere in Brazil, which would be pretty cool. And on one of the bodybuilding podcasts earlier today, I was watching a few. I forget which one it was, but they said something interesting, and I thought this was something worth considering. Now that we know Ramon Dino is interested in switching to open bodybuilding, and now that he's achieved his goal and he's won the Classic Physique Olympia title, how long does he stay in Classic Physique? And is there a potential that he leaves in 2026 to pursue open? Does he defend the title, or does he leave and now it's going to be between Mike and Terrence to fight it out? And I think that's an interesting perspective, because maybe it was that Ramon wanted to stay in Classic Physique until he achieved his goal, and then once he won the title, then switch to open. So I think it is worth considering, does he stay now that he's won, or does he pursue open next year? Now that he's met his goal, does he really need to defend it? He's done what he set out to do. Does he really have anything left to do by staying to defend it or trying to defend it? And it's also worth pointing out that it was a 1-point decision between Ramon and Mike this year. So it's not like Ramon had a slam dunk. The threat of Mike Sommerfeld really is there. And who knows, next year it could go either way and he could lose the title, or he could switch to open this year, just vacate the title and still go out as champion without a loss in Classic Physique. It's interesting to think about. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Now, next up in the news, shortly after I made my video earlier, Andrew Jacked did confirm he will be competing again before the end of the year at the Romania Muscle Fest Pro, which is the second week of November, so a week after that Poland show that we talked about. So he did confirm that 100%. And I will say this, I think I will make a separate video just about Andrew Jacked and his chances of winning the Olympia. I think Andrew, if he goes on to do the Arnold Classic in 2026, it sounds like Derek's out. I'm hearing potentially that Samson is out. Andrew Jacked has a real shot at winning the Arnold and becoming, I think, the most talked about bodybuilder. I think whoever wins the Arnold is going to be the most talked about bodybuilder of 26. But I think really inserting himself in that conversation, I think if Andrew does and wins the Arnold, that will be the biggest win of Andrew's entire career by far. And don't get me wrong, I think he is already in the conversation for contention of winning the title, but I think if he wins the Arnold, there's a legitimate case to be made and legitimate momentum going into the Olympia 2026 that Andrew Jack could win the whole thing. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Now, next up in the news. So Tyler Manion did the breakdown of how he had the men's open bodybuilding finals, how he scored it pose for pose. Now, I was reading the comments. It seems like a lot of people had an issue with Tyler's breakdown. And again, I want to say I think Tyler doing these breakdowns is phenomenal, and it's great for the fans and the bodybuilders to have this explanation. And I only disagreed really with one pose, because when I did my breakdown after prejudging, it looks like me and Tyler have it exactly the same, except for one pose. So Tyler had the front double bicep, the front lat spread, the side chest, the back double bi, and the side tricep, all going to Derek Lunsford. Of those poses, I only disagree with the front double. I would have given that to Hadi. I think Hadi head to toe looked better. I think his legs, Tyler's argument was that his legs looked downsized compared to Derek's. I thought Hadi's legs were more detailed. He had the same flow as Derek, better biceps. So I think you can argue Derek's legs were bigger, sure, but Hadi had better biceps. And I think that would be more important in that pose, even though the whole body is being judged in the pose. If it comes down to one guy has better biceps in the front double bicep and one guy has better legs, I think you're going with the guy that has better biceps. So I would pick Hadi for the front double. And then he had Hadi with the back lat spread, the abs and thighs, and the most muscular. So 5 poses to 3. Derek over Hadi was the vice president of the IFBB's analysis here. And I plan on doing a whole video just on this topic too, because I know it's a big talking point. Was Hadi Chupin robbed? That's the big every comment on every post. And I think I actually have some interesting thoughts on this, so I think I'm going to do a separate video just on that topic. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Derek versus Hadi, 5 poses to 3. That's how the vice president of the IFBB and head judge Tyler Manion has it. Now, next up in the news, I was really impressed by Shaun Clarida's post showing the side-by-sides of 2024 versus 2025 Shaun Clarida. And again, we just talked about earlier how this weekend in Mexico, Shaun Clarida will be competing again in open bodybuilding, and he could potentially qualify for next year's Open Olympia. And I think when I look at these side-by-sides, last year Shaun was 173.2, this year 180.8. I think the biggest and best version of Shaun Clarida that we've ever seen. And honestly, I had no idea that Shaun Clarida was 43 years old. I thought that he was significantly younger than that. I had no clue that he was in his mid-40s. But I want to say, I think the prospect of Shaun Clarida winning this open show, which seems like he's got a good chance, by the way. We looked at the lineup in the last video. If Shaun wins this open show, and Keon has a good chance of winning the Prague Pro, I think that is such an exciting proposition that both Shaun and Keon could qualify for next year's Open Olympia, and they could have their rematch on the Open Olympia stage. I think that would just be so cool to see. I think personally, though, I think Shaun will probably base his decision on whether or not Keon stays in 212 for the Olympia, because if Keon leaves and does Open next year, let's face it, the title is probably going to go to Shaun in 212 if Shaun stays. But just even thinking about the possibility that we might get to see a Keon and Shaun Clarida rematch on the Open Olympia stage, I think would be wildly exciting. But I think one of the toughest guys that Shaun Clarida is going to have to beat this weekend at that Mexico Pro is Tonio Burton, who was just top 8 at the Olympia. Looked incredible. I think based on the lineup that we saw for Mexico, Tonio is the favorite to win that show. Maybe Shaun Clarida is the wild card there. I could see the show, that top 2 being between Tonio and Clarida. But it looks like Tonio just arrived there in Mexico, just got off the plane, and he already looks gnarly. Again, top 8 at the Olympia for the second time this year in a highly, highly competitive lineup. Very impressive package. I think he's probably the favorite to win this Mexico show and get that early 2026 qualification. And then on the other hand, James the Shed Hollingshead. These are the latest physique updates from James, who will be competing in this weekend's British Grand Prix, where he's going to have to face guys like Michael Krizo and Sas Harati. And I think James is certainly looking for some redemption here. We just saw him compete at the Tsunami Nutrition Pro, where he was 6th place. It wasn't a great placing for him there. The Detroit Pro this year, he was 3rd. The Arnold Classic this year, he was 8th. he's had kind of a rough go at the shows that he's done in 2025, especially like the Tsunami show. It really wasn't that stacked. It really wasn't that deep. So to be 6th at a show like that, I think is probably not great for a guy that's as big of a name as James. And I mean, on top of that, the British Grand Prix is in his home country, so he's definitely looking for some redemption here, possibly a win. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Will we see a better version of James and potentially a pro win this weekend at the British Grand Prix? Now, the final story that I've got for you guys today, Martin Fitzwater's latest physique update ahead of the Prague Pro, which will be next weekend, not this weekend, where he's going to have to face Keon Pearson, Michael Krizo. He said this one goes out to all the bodybuilding analysts, the experts that counted Martin out. I do feel like I could have talked about Martin more going into the Olympia, but to be fair, in my prediction video, I had Martin in 5th, and that's where he placed. But he brought a great look to the Olympia, and to be honest, I think that as much as I'm a fan of Keon, as much as I like Keon and his physique, Martin is going to be tough for Keon to beat. I think you could have made an argument for Martin even higher. I think you could have made a real argument for Martin being in the top 4. I would have liked to see Martin in that call-out with Samson, Hadi, Derek, and Andrew. But I'll be real, I think that Martin is that good, and he's going to give Keon a run for his money. I think Keon legitimately will have a difficult time beating Martin. And I think if he does, and that's a big if still at this point, that's huge for Keon because Martin is legit. He's the real deal. So if Keon beats a guy like Martin, that becomes a very interesting conversation for the trajectory of Keon's open future. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Martin versus Keon, who comes out on top? Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, click that bell notification icon if you have not already. And as always, I love you guys, appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power signing out. All right, guys, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the content. Also, check out my Instagram at Nick Strength Power, my Facebook page, which is simply Nick Strength and Power, my secondary YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Vlogs, for vlogs and bonus content that you will not see on this channel. And consider subscribing to my third YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Pokemon, which is all things Pokemon and trading card games, completely unrelated to this channel. So if you're into that, give that one a look. And all links to merchandise and social media will be in the description box below. If you guys want a Nick Strength and Power t-shirt, that will be in the Shopify link below. Have a great day.